Hi everybody, this screencast is designed to cover the main points from our talk that we had at Professional Development Day in April 2017. We're going to talk about the best practices for co-teaching, some of the things that we did over the last academic year as we scaled up with our English department's co-requisite model. Here's who we are. My name is Matt Norman. I'm an associate professor of English here at VU, and then you can see my contact information here. I've been teaching English for a couple of years, several years, and was part of the redesign of the co-rec model. I teach primarily English Composition 1. I want to introduce my colleague, Jane Minderman, who's going to tell you a little bit about what she's all about, and also, as she was a little new to this before the start of the academic year, kind of what she was thinking and how we started to work together. Then we'll go back and forth.
Okay. Yes, I'm Jane Minderman, and I have been at VU since 2001, teaching reading in some format. And so last spring, when I learned that we would now be part of the English department and that I would be helping teach with the co-rec model, I did have a little bit of trepidation, having not taught writing before. But this co-rec model, when I found out in the spring of last year, of 16, that I got an email from the English department secretary, and it said that you were going to be paired with Norman's 101 classes. And I thought, well, okay, I know Tara Norman. She was the secretary for English previously, but this was Matt. And Matt and I have exchanged pleasantries quite often, but we hadn't really worked together very much. But it has been a really pleasant, wonderful experience for me this past academic year. We did meet in the summer to share ideas and kind of get on the same page, and Matt was very kind to loan me his syllabus so I would be able to get some ideas there, and I swiped ideas also, and we've just really clicked, I thought. So it's been a good academic year.
Indeed. And I'll say for my part that having done the pilot, I originally piloted with a different faculty member, Professor Adam Moore, and at that point it was our co-requisite course model was an English-based writing co-requisite without as much emphasis on reading. So I had to retool a lot of my thinking of what would be the most effective kind of integrated reading and writing strategies as well. So it's been a great learning experience, I think, for everybody at the VU campus, but I can say personally for me especially, it's been really great. It's been a really good experience working with someone else too. I taught my own co-rec last spring 2016, but this co-teaching I think is definitely my preference. I think that it just is a great chance for different perspectives, and that leads to better lessons, better activities, and we hope better students. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this document here. That's kind of the structure of our talk. This is a file that's available on the English department's professional development page of the Google site, which I have a link for at the end. If you have not heard of it, or if you don't have access to it, of course you can copy down the link that I have at the end of the PowerPoint, or you could shoot me an email at mnorman@binu.edu. Well, we're just going to use this document, which was developed by a couple of English professors who worked pretty extensively with the co-requisite model. We had it kind of proofed and reviewed by a number of co-teachers, especially adjunct faculty members that we thought might really benefit from having their voices heard, and so we integrated their feedback into this document. So we've had a lot of eyeballs on this before it comes out to you guys, and it is just a way for us to kind of show, well, here's how Jane and I have tried to do that over the last however 10 months or whatever we're at now. So the first thing that the document talks about is just about rethinking our scaffolding in our pacing. I'm going to talk about it just briefly, and then I'll toss it over to Jane so she can give her thoughts on it too. In fall of 2016, Jane and I were putting our heads together about what we thought would be the best way, the most kind of direct way for students to see the way that the courses connect together. We thought the reading response assignment was the best way to do that. Very straightforward assignment in my class. They summarize an article from the textbook and then respond to it. Made perfect sense for Jane to have additional summary assignments that would kind of lead into the reading response project. Students are doing work in her class, getting better at some of those summarizing skills. Then they later turn it in with a little additional work to the one-on-one class, and it's all connected together. What happened, though, is that at least in the fall semester, the pacing was just a little bit off. And this is something that I felt very strongly about for a number of years. I thought that was very beneficial to have certain assignments that were kind of smaller assignments. These are each worth 20 points, and they all total up to 100 points at the end of the semester. Make them self-paced so that students can kind of be self-motivated and work on their time management skills. And we had them over additional readings so that they could explore different topics. And what we found is that, instead of doing all that great stuff, that good kind of like grad school pedagogy that you hear about, it's like, oh, we're going to make these students have ownership over the work. They just didn't do it instead. So we changed that around a little bit. And so for spring 2017, sort of paced out these readings a little bit more, making sure that it all worked towards an essay that was coming up afterwards, putting them more spread throughout the semester so that when Jane's making the argument that it's like, this is something you're going to have to do, or that's going to work towards stuff in English 101, students are like, yeah, when? And now she could say next week instead of having to say at the end of the semester. So it's just it just makes a lot more sense altogether.
Yes, it really did work out nicely this spring in that, for example, I had the students doing the Learning to Read by Frederick Douglass. We did a critical reading guide, hit the ground running on that in the very first week, and had them doing a summary turned in by the second week. And then Matt was assigning his first reading response journal after that, and it could be that one. So the light bulb switched on for most of my kids. There was one kid that said, why are we doing this extra work in this class? But I kind of lit into him on that and got him straightened out, and he got it. So I think most of the students did get that. Oh, and my slide is up next. This says, but we don't want to lower the expectations in the co-requisite model. These students are still having to do college-level work, and we have to expect that of them. So the things that we want to be sure that they do, what Comp 1 is a big proponent of, is that you're reading these stories, you're analyzing them. You have to be able to summarize them also and put them in your own words. And that's something that I definitely discovered with 079, and maybe Matt has discovered it with the 101, straight 101 students too, that they are not the best at paraphrasing. So we did quite a bit of that. Like the slide says, you don't want to assume they already know how to do it. So we did the paraphrasing, did exercises where I took parts from the Reading the World text, which is the book that Matt and I are using in these two classes, and had them working on that. Also, we did how to do in-text citations, how to do works cited, and something that is near and dear to my heart is the vocabulary, and we tried to I tried to do a lot of more contextual vocabulary exercises with them. And for example, one time it was just really dear to my heart that I had them taking sentences from, or an unknown word from one of the selections, and then writing the sentence down too on a 4x6 card. And next class time we just kind of went over and picked those apart, picked the sentences apart and talked about it. And the greatest compliment I got was that when I said, well, it's time to stop, and one student said, wow, class is already over? So that was real near and dear to my heart. And we know vocabulary is so crucial for their reading comprehension, and that's one way that I try to integrate the reading into there, although we do it all the time in Comp 1.
Basically, when we realize that students are weak in something, we have two options. We can lower expectations because, they'll never get up to this certain level, or we realize that we need to spend more time on it, that we need to focus in on it. And obviously the latter is the way that we know to be the most successful. Along the same lines, and trying to figure out how do we make room for all this stuff, we want to give opportunities to go really in depth so that we can spend time on things. So we want to think about quality over quantity. And so there are a couple of different readings that we did in the fall 2016. These were readings that led up to essay number 1. And so we've just tried to consolidate them so that we could take more time to get into them. So we had like 4 readings for fall 2016. We kind of consolidated that down to spring 2017. So that's really just 2 readings. And that gave us enough that we could talk about, we could practice critical reading, we could talk about how it impacts us so that we could do some more of those good critical thinking activities as well. And then they'd be more prepared to do their writing for essay that was coming up. It also allowed us better to do the reading response assignment too, because there wasn't as much, extra reading. And I don't mean that to sound bad, but just that we could dive in deeper and get into more in-depth exploration of paragraphs and what an author means by some of these things.
That is correct. And another huge thing is to communicate regularly. I found that we definitely wanted to present a united front to the students. I would tell them every day that, well, I've talked with Professor Norman, and this is what we're going to do. And so it's just an important thing, and that we have each other's back, too. And everyday conversation is not that hard to do, even if it's just checking in for a moment or just shooting a quick email. And for me, it was good to get up and take a walk and just kind of get out of my cubby for a little while. And so then comparing notes on the students, they probably didn't realize how much we compared notes on possible individuals, but it was good too. It makes it more illuminating for both of us to know what's going on in each of the classes. So that's an important key.
There were times during this semester where both of us had to be out for a day or two or a couple of days, and in all of those times we made sure that we kept each other on the same page, so that if a student came by and said, well, where's so-and-so, we could actually give an answer. And I think that just says so much more about what a united front we are, that we kind of know each other a little bit, and that we're actually paying attention to what's going on, because you don't want to get into that situation where a student is kind of pitting a professor against each other. Well, he said I've got to do this. Well, she said that I've got to do this. We talk about it. We are trying to figure out the best way to hit these kids from all sides, so to speak, of course. And the discussion questions I'll mention in just a second here also kind of lend themselves towards that. Ultimately, these last 4 steps really do allow us to be better partners. And the discussion questions document I mentioned before kind of emphasizes that too. This document's on our Google site as well, so you're not going to go through the entire thing here, but it's just a series of questions that allow us to get on the same page at the beginning of the semester. They're questions that you can just sit down and talk through with your partner teacher to try and get a better sense of where he or she is coming from. And then that way you don't have to fumble around, because with things like thesis statements, there are some people that are really strict about where it should be placed in the paragraph. Some people not so much. Same thing with certain things about like outlines. Some professors are really, really strict about wanting the numeric format, the Roman numeral format, I should say, whereas others are maybe a little bit more okay with the bullet outline, maybe for Comp 1 versus like Comp 2, where it should be a little bit more formalized. So that's one thing. We use the discussion points.
And the observing each other was a big help for me last fall when I was having my trepidatious, more of them. And so I went a couple of times and observed Matt's 101 class, and it really was helpful to know that, my word, we kind of have similar presentation styles, and we both have that kind of odd sense of humor sometimes, and that's good. That's a good thing, I think.
We tried to do it pretty early on, too. Yes. I tried to come into the first class, or maybe during the first week. I don't think we quite get the first class all the time. Jane and I, our schedules have always kind of popped up that either we have a class that's conflicting with another class that we have, like in the fall, it was actually, we switched students. Jane was teaching co-rec at 8 while I was teaching a 101 at 8, and then we basically swapped students for the next hour. And so that presents some challenges, but we made it work, and that says a lot too about being united. And then it also just helps that with the last point here, if you're like me, sometimes you're just kind of like scratching your head, like, man, I just don't know if this is going to be a good assignment. I don't know if this is a good essay, if this is too unfair, if this is too much. And then you just get this great sense, this great feedback on who what students are capable of from somebody that knows really well. We're going to wrap things up. I just want to point out this little link right here. This is the Google site link, and if you kind of follow along again, you can get the link from me, or just kind of type in that URL. And this is the page. It's under construction right now, but you'll be able to see this presentation. You'll be able to see a lot of other notes and tips and things, and we just hope that it all leads to a much more successful semester going forward, onward and upward.
Yes, I feel like this has been a very good academic year, but I also know that there's things that we'll be continuing to do, and